Welcome back to Corralling the Chaos. I'm Angela Alea. Well, football season is finally here. And for many of you, that means your group chat and the smack talk is going to come back to life, and your Sundays are probably going to take on a new meaning now. But preseason has officially started this month. But for the people who actually make the games happen, their season started a while ago. So by the time the fans make their way to the seats, there's really already a show running around them. And many of us were really never meant to notice all that's kind of happening, whether it's the video board that hits exactly on cue, it's the music after the third down, it's the moment the crowd loses its mind, and it somehow feels completely spontaneous, except somebody behind the scenes planned that, timed it perfectly, and caught it live in the moment. So today, we're talking about what it actually takes to produce a game and everything that happens behind the scenes to make those 3.5 hours really feel effortless. So my guest today just happens to do it in front of 70,000 people on a clock she doesn't control with no reset button. Laura Johnson is the Senior Director of Game Presentation and Live Events for the San Francisco 49ers, where she runs game presentation, live events, and entertainment at Levi Stadium and oversees a 275-person game day operation. This is her 19th NFL season. Along the way, she's held leadership roles across 10 Super Bowls, the College Football Playoff National Championship, the NCAA Men's Final Four, and the Kentucky Derby. LJ, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me, Angela. Great to be here.
Yeah, great to have you. We are excited to dig in and learn all that really happens behind the scenes. So thank you for kind of imparting your wisdom and your experience and all the things that we're dying to know about. And so I wanted to start the conversation today around your role. And so when somebody asks you what you do and you have got 30 seconds to explain that, what exactly do you tell them, and what exactly are you responsible for once the gates open?
Yeah, so the very quick synopsis is I'm the executive producer behind the 49ers Game Day Experience. So I lead the team that's responsible for everything fans see, hear, and feel. So if it moves and makes sounds on game day, from the video boards, the music, the lighting, the pyro, player intros, ceremonies, halftime, etc., that's ultimately my job, to turn a football game into a complete live experience for 70,000 people, like you mentioned. So once gates open, I'm overseeing the 275 person game day operation that you just mentioned, serving as the executive producer of the entire in-stadium show. So we have a show caller on the team who's executing the minute by minute rundown, while I'm looking across the entire full experience. I'm making sure all of the creative and technical entertainment and operational pieces are staying connected. So that means coordinating with football operations, stadium ops, broadcasts, security, corporate partnerships, and the league itself. So really protecting anything that could affect the team or the game, and making real-time decisions as to whether, what would change here or there. The game moves really fast now compared to where it was 20 years ago. And so, a football game is completely unscripted. And we build a very highly scripted show, like you mentioned, to the second, around a very unpredictable event. And so my responsibility is to make sure that all feels seamless to the fan, even when behind the scenes we're adjusting constantly. And really the goal is, when people come to a 49ers game, they shouldn't really be thinking about anything that is overly technical, or even the pageantry that they're seeing on the field. It should just feel like magic, just like any other, sporting event that someone goes to, or a theme park. You're not thinking about all the little things that go into it. You're just really experiencing the moment and having a great time.
I've always said that, before I got into the events industry, I only understood it from a consumer perspective, right? We walk in, we consume these great experiences with very little appreciation for all that happens to prepare it. I mean, everything you do, you're adjusting on the fly, right? And I think that's the closer you get to that, the more appreciation we all have for it versus just showing up and being a consumer of it. But walk me through a game day at Levi from your seat. So like little things, like I want to get granular here. Like what time do you get here? What's the first thing you do? Where are you physically once it starts? So just kind of walk us through what a Sunday looks like in your.
Yeah, it honestly it starts even before I get to the venue. You know, I mean, there's little things that happen on game day that are taking place before I even make it to the venue itself. You know, I usually arrive at the stadium anywhere from 6 to 6.5 hours prior to kick. So that's early. If we have a 1:05 kick, you know, I'm rolling in around 6:30, maybe 7 a.m. For a 1 o'clock kickoff, and our crew is as well. We mentioned that, you know, 275 people as a part of the crew are rolling in early too. We have some staggered times that they're coming in, but my day actually starts, you know, with the phone very first thing in the morning. You never know what's going to happen. You never know what's going to transpire. And honestly,
Do you sleep well on Saturday nights? I mean, do you get to like go out and do it like, or are you just like locked in and like resting up for the next one?
pretty dialed in. You know, it's interesting to think about it. I don't think a lot of fans or folks think about it. Our game day routine and what we do and how we really prepare for these games. It's silly to say, but it's almost like an athlete, right? So you know, the night before we even get to a game, you know, I've spent most of my day the day before at the venue, just going over everything, dotting I's, crossing T's. We even say dotting lowercase j's, just to make sure that we have everything taken care of. And then really the night before the game, you know, the goal is to get a good night's sleep. You never know what's going to happen or what we've just encountered the day before the game, but the goal is really to get just a little bit of good sleep there before waking up the next morning and dealing with whatever's going to come your way. It is live events, things happen, things change, but really it does start with trying to get a good healthy amount of sleep. I would say I don't sleep a lot just in general. I'm somebody who tries to get the most out of every single day that I'm given in life, and so, you know, somewhere between 5, 6 hours is pretty on par, I would say, before a game. But rolling in on game day, you know, the first thing I normally do when I get to the venue is I cruise through a couple of different spaces. Normally I walk right past our entertainment area where our cheerleaders and drumline and the folks overseeing our entertainment teams are. So I usually pop in, say good morning to them, kind of have a routine of checking in with them before I head upstairs to our control room, and then head up there and say good morning to everybody, check in with everybody, see what's on tap for the day as the day gets started and we unfold. And it really goes, you know, really fast from there, to be quite honest. The crew comes in, we have rehearsals first thing. As soon as rehearsals are over, we have a production meeting where we bring together the entire production side of our crew. We go line by line through the rundown. We'll go through everything that we have in store for the show. We break. Most people go off and get a meal break. That's really my moment of zen, to be quite honest. I get about 10, 15 minutes while the crew's away eating, just to, you know, zen out real quick. And then it's on to more meetings, headed down to, we have a NFL security meeting and a broadcast meeting, and then head back upstairs and we're in show mode at that point. We're into our pregame, and it's that constant line of everything that we have programmed all the way until the final whistle. And even after that, we have some PA announcements after that. And then the goal on Sundays, if we're kicking off at 1 o'clock, goal is to hopefully be home by about the third quarter of the Sunday night football game, just to give you so it's really, it's about a 12, 13-hour day in the venue, just from start to finish.
Yeah. Is there, there's a couple things that I think are interesting there. The first thing is, you know, you're responsible for the production, right? And all those details. But there's also the people side of it, right? You've got 275 people, and like the fact that you're walking in and you're making sure you say good morning to everybody, right? There's that like just people leadership aspect of it. So there's clearly a lot you're juggling as you think about game days. Is there anything that you kind of obsess over that maybe most people wouldn't notice?
I would simply say, you know, for me, it's a lot of the timing. It's a lot of, you know, the timing is really important to everything that we're doing, especially in pregame and especially on the bigger games that we're working with our broadcasters. I take a lot of pride in hitting the times that we say we're going to hit.
Yeah.
You know, there's a lot of trust that takes place between us and the broadcasters, right? Like we're creating experience in venue for 70,000 people. They're taking that experience and broadcasting that to millions, right? And bringing that out to to really the national audience and to the world at times. And so they're really trusting us to hit our marks and to hit those times. And so really developing, those relationships over the last 19 years across the industry, have a lot of trust with our broadcasters. And so I get really obsessive over those types of little details as it pertains to time and sticking to time. And I'm just very aware of it and really what that could mean, not only for us, but for the greater broadcast. And of course, we need to stay on time for our football team on the field and for the league.
Yeah, that makes sense. So you said this is your 19th NFL season. So I want you to go back and think about your first one. What did game presentation look like back then across the league?
Oh, game presentation was so different back then. I was lucky enough. I started actually in 2006 with the Arizona Cardinals, helped open up their stadium out there in Glendale, Arizona. It felt to me at that time, it felt big, right? And now I've seen where the trajectory of game presentation has gone in the industry, and it's just so much bigger now, right? Our crew was, maybe a quarter of the size, right, in terms of production and all the different pieces that were coming together. But really at the time, there was video board programming, camera coverage, all the staples that people see. But now it's so heavily experiential, right? There's pyro and lighting and LED wristbands, and really trying to craft these unforgettable experiences. Not to say that those weren't the case 20 years ago. We just didn't have all of those different pieces at our disposal. They were coming online, right? There was a lot that was being done back then, 20 years ago, which again, it felt big in the time, but now it's kind of dwarfed. And I think that's just, part of the industry as we go. People are craving live experiences now more than they ever have, especially coming out of the pandemic. And especially as we start to see, AI, obviously, and people are just craving things that are very real in their lives and to be a part of these moments. And so the impetus for all of these bigger experiences and these shared moments is really intensified, I would say, over 20 years.
Yeah. It's like the bar continues to rise, right? And you've got to meet the moment because expectations are rising. People are searching for that authenticity and that kind of real connection. So that makes sense. You shared something with me before the show that I want to dig into a little bit. You've been scripting online for almost 20 years. And you are, in your own words, a staunch supporter of rundown because paper, number one, costs valuable time. Number two, it slows down operators. And number three, it doesn't really allow for the most amount of creativity on game day, regardless of the sport. So I'd love for you to take a minute and talk us through what a paper rundown actually costs a show, because I think our audience would be surprised to know there are still a few engagements out there where people are doing rundowns and these massive productions on paper. So talk to us a little bit about those things.
Yeah, so it's really in the lead up, I think, to the game specifically. We do still print off our rundowns. You do need to have a belt and suspenders. I truly believe that no matter what's going on, you always want to have, redundancy to what you have scripted. But really, for the most part, what it costs is the lead up. I think about the instances where I've been on some big shows. I've been on Super Bowls and Final Four and Kentucky Derby with paper rundowns. And you're going to go through your entire rehearsal and you're going to mark up your script, right? As an operator or as a producer or anybody else in the room. And now the part of that is your notes, your proprietary bespoke notes that you have for you.
Yeah.
It's unique, right? And then you go back and especially on those bigger shows and somebody has changes and they need them to change. And so here comes rundown 47, right? Version 47 just gets printed out. And now as an operator, you've got to transfer all those little idiosyncrasies, the marking here. I'm going to tell, if I'm a playback op, I'm going to tell my producer I'm counting down to this logo at this second. Now I have to transfer all of those notes onto the newest rundown, right, that you just got handed. And the benefit of online and what has been the benefit of online scripting for nearly 20 years and why I continue to be such an advocate for it is everybody can have their own notes. And when the changes are happening, which they inevitably do, this is live events, nothing goes according to the
Never.
rundown.
Right.
Ever. And so when those changes are happening and we're moving things here or there in the rundown during rehearsals, at whatever it might be, the notes that an operator is taking or contributing is moving with it. So you're not having to go back and redo, right? I'm kind of not joking when I say version 47.
Yeah,
I've seen these,
yeah, that's right.
continue to evolve and change. And so that's a big one in terms of the massive difference between the paper rundown process leading up to a show, as well as, how it's happening on the game itself. Now we get into the game and we talk about how things move. We talked about at the start of this, the unpredictable nature of a football event or really any live event. This could be even corporate that we're applying it to. And you are scripting things that need to evolve as the unscripted moments are changing on the day. And so to be able to do that very fluid and for other people to have this up and open and to track the producer as this is moving is just so critical to keeping everyone aligned. Right. I like to
I'm
say
getting like anxiety, even just like thinking about this, like, oh my gosh, like if I'm on the receiving end, like, oh my gosh, is what I'm about to take action on? Is it the most up to date? Is it the right cue? It's just, it gives me anxiety just thinking about it.
Yeah, so it's all about keeping everyone aligned. Again, these crews and the amount of people that we have to keep aligned is really important. Communication is key to all of it, but you can really be efficient when everybody has this open, available, they're tracking, they're seeing where things are moving in the day. And then the third piece that I feel is really critical to this is it really allows for us to be more creative. So in terms of like being flexible, right? Allowing the game to come to us. So one thing that you'll see in game presentation is, yes, we have these things scripted, but it's really critical to let the game come to you, to feel it out, right? You don't want to have something big that's planned and then all of a sudden we turn the ball over and it just doesn't feel right. Like the fans know that.
That authenticity, right? Just letting it be natural and yeah.
Exactly. So the fans feel that, they know that. So it's our job to let the game come to us and really to react accordingly with it. And to do that, you have to be able to go really quickly. You have to be able to adjust and move and shake in a very quick way. And paper rundowns, that's hard. Here we go. We're flipping. Like, hey, get with me. I'm going to pull something from that was probably scripted in the third quarter. Need to pull that up to the first. The old manner would have been flip, 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 find it. Oh, I can't find it. Guess what? The moment's passed. Right?
Yeah.
So the biggest part of it is
waiting for everybody else around you to catch up as well.
Exactly.
Meanwhile, yeah, the moment's passed.
Exactly. So it's speed, right? It's speed, it's efficiency, it's alignment with our crew, and all of those things can be done online and done very well and at a very high level. And again, love paper. It has its place. Again, it's very redundant for us. I'm not knocking paper scripts, but just can't lean on that because it just takes so much time.
Yeah, it's your fallback. Do you ever get 275 people is a lot of people, right? And we all show up with different tendencies, different levels of tech savvy, different levels of speed, right? Which I guess if you're going to be on this crew, you all have to operate at a certain level, right? But do you ever get, what are some of the nuances, right? When it's like, well, I want to operate this way and I want it to run this way, right? Whereas you're kind of leading that. So how do you get everybody aligned to work in the same way for what is best for the game?
Yeah, so for us, it really starts with, this is our North Star, right? So the rundown is really our North Star for everything that we're doing. And we're saying, go here during the week. This is where you're going to find your most updated information. This is where you're going to see things change throughout the week before we even get to the game. And I realize it. Look, there's the other part about it when you have a crew, and a lot of our production crew freelance for other venues in the Bay. I used to be, I think one of the most valuable pieces for me in my career is I did freelance for 5 years before I got a full-time job. And it was really important because everyone handles things differently across different teams. And it's really important to remember that the way we show call something might be different than the way that they're experiencing that at a Warriors game or the Valkyries or the Giants. And so the goal is really to try to get the crew to come in. We realize that they're at a bunch of other different teams and different venues as they're freelancing, but we're trying to make it as consistent as possible. So when they come in, we want to have that North Star of the rundown. We want them to be able to get all of the information that they possibly can. Our job is really, I always say this is complex as a lot of this sounds. It's really boiled down. It can be very simply stated that it's the job of the producer. My job is executive producer, and then Cody Acevedo, who's on my team, as the producer and show caller. It's our job to tell the crew where we're going. It's very simple. The crew, your job is just to help us get there.
Yeah.
Don't overcomplicate
and that's part of what Rundown does, right? That is the direction of here's where we're going, here's what to expect. Yeah. The source of truth.
Exactly. And so it can feel very complex. It can feel very, you can easily overthink things. But if you just boil it down to like, our job is just to tell you where we're going. Your job is to help us get there. Don't overthink it. Stay aligned, stay clear, right? Have clear communication, and everything comes together from there.
Yeah, that makes sense. So take us inside the control room at kickoff -30. Talk to us about what's on the screen, who's looking at it, who's in control, what's the conversation that's happening. So give us some insight into that.
Yeah, so kickoff -30 minutes. Right about that time is when our player warm-ups are ending. So the players for both teams are usually starting to huddle up. They're starting to head off of the field. For us, again, kind of in a structural way, I'm on a wireless belt pack, and I kind of bounce back and forth between both. We have two control rooms. We have a front-facing control room with about 15 operators in it, and then we have a back control room that really mimics a production truck that you would see on any broadcast. And we have about 35, sometimes 40 operators in there. And so I'm usually bouncing back and forth between those two rooms at that given particular time. Cody's calling everything minute to minute, right? We are typically from there into some programming, for things that we have to do from a safety and security standpoint. We have to play an evacuation video and do some housekeeping, but then we're also welcoming our fans in at that point. We know our fans come at different times and are staggered in the way that they show up to our games. So we'll typically welcome them into the game. We'll have our hosts tee us up on what to expect at the game, right? What we have on tap from an entertainment standpoint, or what to look for in the game from a football standpoint. Our entertainment teams take the field. So we're featuring our Gold Rush cheerleaders, drumline, mascot, etc. Our DJs, we have an amazing DJ team here out in the Bay. So we're usually featuring them. And then it really starts to intensify from there. So we're getting closer and closer to our open video, which is our kind of like piece de resistance of pregame, where we're synchronizing our video with pyro and lighting, really creating that spectacle for fans. And then it continues to intensify because the team, is cued to run out. We have special effects that go along with that as well. And then really quickly, we'll have anywhere from 45 seconds, sometimes a minute, to flip the field from player intros, which has, again, it's part of that spectacle of on-field special effects. We have pyro that goes with that, lighting, etc. And then we're flipping and getting right into a very serious moment, right, with the national anthem. And sometimes that's taken live on broadcast, sometimes it isn't. But regardless, it's still a very critical moment. And again, timing is essential because we're an outdoor stadium and we love having pyro and flyovers with our national anthem. So we have to stay completely in lockstep on that. Coming out of that, the energy is really usually high at that point. And then we're getting into, a fun like trailer type of video. And then we get into our pregame tradition right after coin toss of sounding the foghorn for everybody. We try to get a chant going, a call and response. We started last year, bang, bang, Niner gang. So we'll have somebody at the foghorn say bang, bang, crowd echoes back Niner gang. The intensity is getting higher and higher. And then we kick off the ball. Pregame's over and we're right into football action.
Yeah, and that's go time. Okay. So talk to us about a time when something maybe didn't go as planned. Maybe it went a little sideways mid-game and you had to adjust in the moment live, not lose your cool, not freak out, not freeze. But tell us what happened. Like, how long did you have? Did the crowd ever know? But talk to us about that.
So I have a great one for you that actually happened last year, and it was on our last regular season game. It was in January, and we were playing the Seahawks. It was our big rivalry game, and we had some technical things that just popped up, and I won't bore you with some of those details, but all of that simply to say there was a series of events that took place right before player intros. And we ended up losing audio on our open video about halfway through the open video. It just dropped out. And what saved us was pyro, because we had synchronized pyro. So nobody really, the fans out there really didn't know. Maybe some folks in the suites knew, some folks on our executive team, texted like, hey, did we just lose audio there? But for the most part, the fans out in the stands didn't really notice because the pyro saved us on that.
Great timing.
Great timing for the audio to go out. And then, but it was a very high pucker factor because coming out of that open video, we were working with ESPN. It was a Saturday night game that we actually had with them. And it was the first primetime game, I believe, for the year. And part of that was celebrating America 250. So we were working with the league on the national anthem being taken live with ESPN. And so the audio going out on the open video triggers quite a few different questions. Did we lose the whole PA system? Was it just the audio on the video itself? In that moment, we typically run two videos at the exact same time so we can have a failover. Well, the failover didn't work. So then you start to triage from there. Okay, is it just isolated to the video? Well, we learned in that moment it was just isolated. We didn't lose the whole PA system. Great, right? You figure that out within the span of 30 seconds. Okay, didn't lose the whole system. As that was going on, I also lost my comm belt pack to the AD in the truck with ESPN, who was going to cue me for the national anthem. Ironically, coincidentally, I should say, she and I actually talked about it the day before. It's like, hey, what happens if comms goes out? And she's like, I will call you. So she ended up,
timing.
I know, right? She's amazing. She's a seasoned Maddie Castle. She's such a
It's
seasoned.
so great to have people on the team, isn't it? Who think are like, but what about this? What about this? Right? Like they think about all that.
Yeah.
Thank goodness for those people.
And she and I have worked together for probably 7 or 8 years, with ESPN and coming to town. And so luckily we have a great rapport. She was trying to get a hold of me. I couldn't get a hold of her. She calls me on my cell phone. I want to say, that all took place while, intros are happening. And again, 2.5 minutes later, we're going live with the national anthem, right? So very little time to get that to, is it just the video? Did we lose the whole complete sound system? If we lost the sound system, what's our backup plan? There's so many things that you have to think through in the moment, but really critical that we had that communication the day before. We had a backup plan in place. We thought through some of these different scenarios, but that's just one. We had at least 3 or 4 situations where things happened last year for us. And there's always one. I feel like every year there's something that comes up that you just really don't expect. And that's live events. I feel like a lot of us are in this profession and in this line of work, and probably, some deep-seated psychological thing of getting an adrenaline rush out of that. But it's fun.
I don't know. That may not be necessary. Yeah, I feel like there's enough adrenaline rushing through that game without that kind of thing. Because there's the things that you can't see coming, right? That you have to be prepared for. But talk to us about when you're tasked with things like replay reviews or injury timeouts or overtime. How do you rebuild the show in real time when it can't really follow your script, right? Those are things that are just going to naturally happen. So how do you deal with that?
Yeah, I mean, the good thing about it is for me and this particular, point in my career is, we have known knowns, right? Like we know there's going to be replay reviews. We know there's going to be injuries that take place. Same thing you talk about overtime, that's a possibility. And so at this particular, place in my career, I've had enough muscle memory of being around that and planning for it, right? So those are things that you don't know when they're going to happen, but we do plan for those things to happen and adjust accordingly, right? So if it is a very critical challenge that's happening, you have something scripted for that break, This is where the rundown comes in. We're easily able to talk about that. Sometimes it'll take a whole commercial break, and we'll say, okay, we're taking everything that's from this commercial break and we're moving it to the next one, or we'll punt that and move it further down the line. Same thing happens with an injury on the field, right? You want to be respectful of, the player that's down on the field. We're not going to go to some shuffle, a helmet shuffle, while there's a player that's down on the field. We're going to move, the content that we have programmed for that break to another break. And so really, when you think about it and you think about programming accordingly, again, these are things that we know happen, and we do plan for those scenarios, and we do adjust as they come to us.
Yeah. So stressful. Just hearing you talk. So with Rundown, what's something that you feel like you can attempt now that you may not have risked, I don't know, 10 years ago even?
10 years ago. Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing is for us is really making sure that we continue to stay creative, right? And so things like interacting with our fans, moving our hosts around the building, those are all things that are really important. Again, letting the game come to us, reacting, feeling out the crowd, so that we're being timely with what we're doing. And I would say, 10 years ago, even you still try to do those things. But again, the growth of the production and how everything is continuing to evolve. We used to have, back in the day, you'd have one host. Now we have two hosts. We used to have a DJ. We have multiple DJs now, right? And so when you think about what can you do now versus what you could do 10 years ago, it's really scaling the operation and scaling the production and making sure that everyone stays in alignment. And so like, as everything continues, this isn't going to be the end all be all either. We're going to continue to advance and grow over the next 5-10 years in the industry as well. And so it's about being able to keep up. It's about being able to have spontaneous moments. I think that's really important. Being able to have spontaneous moments that we can react to in real time, and just making sure that we can hit on those and keep everyone in alignment.
Yeah, there's that word again, alignment. And, it's one thing to keep a team of 20 people aligned. It's very different when you're leading 275 people in a live event setting where the stakes are high. And so, especially when you're leading them through 3.5 hours, where there's really no margin for things to slip. There's no reset button. There's no do-over, anything like that. So how do you lead that, and how do you keep a crew that size calm when something breaks, right? Because I'm sure it's very off-putting. And sure, I know that these people have been doing it for years too, but that's a skill set that's kind of hard to hire for, right? It's not like they have that on a resume, and just because it says it on a resume means that they're going to show up with that, right? So what do you look for when you're building that team that isn't necessarily going to be on a resume?
So it really comes down to communication and trust. I think a big part of that is, you can't keep, it's not up to one person to keep 275 people aligned. Yeah. That's going to be spread out across different leaders, right? That you assign these tasks and communication to. And so it really comes down to, to trust and communication. And so like, what am I looking for? I'm looking for somebody to, who can join the team and who can be flexible and adapt, right? I think a big part of that is saying that, you understand that the live environment has a lot of changes. I've worked with a lot of different people over the years, and there's people who want to have things scripted, and then when one small thing goes, off, they get rattled by it, and you can't be rattled by it, right? Like, you just have to say, okay, like that, we should have marched down the field and scored a touchdown, so we could have done this really cool thing. Well, the team didn't. We ended up punting, and now you have to go to something
Welcome
else.
To life, right? Where everything doesn't go as planned.
And so it's really about adaptability. And I think a big part of being adaptable is also having humility. So you have to be willing to show up and be humble and say, okay, what pieces of information do I need? Curiosity. What pieces of information do I need? What pieces of information do I not have in this moment? Can I get that from someone else to help me make a better informed decision? So really it's this openness to feedback, to improvement, to adapting, and really saying, how are we going to achieve that as a group together? They're on those moments when something is happening. You cannot have 5-6 voices talking at the same time, right? And so there has to be a clear leader or two who are saying, I know this is happening, right? And here's how we're going to triage. Here's how we're going to handle crisis communication in the moment, right? There's going to be, you have to stay on this task. I need you to keep show calling as is while I go handle this and figure out, did we lose the entire PA system?
Yeah.
And so it's having that calmness about you and that clarity of saying, this is how we're going to proceed forward in the moment, and having the trust of everybody that the right people are on the task to solve it.
Yeah, it's a gift for sure. Well, kudos to you, because you clearly have that and lead your team very well. There are still those teams out there today that are running game presentation without a real system. It's still paper and pen. So if one of those producers from one of those teams were to call you tomorrow, what would you tell them, and what should they change first?
Yeah, so, I do have quite a few people who call up and ask about it, right? The return on investment. Like, why should I make this investment? Why should I do this? And what I simply tell them is, if you want to evolve your show, which is what all of us want to do, this is what our leadership teams are going to task us to do, right? Is continue to evolve the fan experience, continue to evolve what we're doing. You have to be able to make decisions faster. It's been something that I've obsessed over, really honestly, over the last 20 years, is how do I make decisions faster? The faster I can make decisions, the quicker we can be in the moment and be spontaneous and more creative, right? And really that's what it's truly about. It's about how we are engaging the fans in the most modern way possible. And so I tell them that it really isn't that much in the grand scheme of things of a cost, right? You can take the total cost of what it would take to invest in the rundown online scripting and break that up over how many games that you actually have, and then say, like, is it worth it? And the answer is yes. You know why? Because you have millions of dollars on the line. These partnership deals that are coming through with deliverables and assets for the game, it's millions of dollars on the line. Think we can afford to make sure that we have an online scripting platform that we can all use to stay in alignment and not miss anything. And then again, just to be able to make those decisions quicker. I can't stress that enough for the folks who are still on paper rundowns or who call and ask, like, what are we doing, right now in this day and age of game presentation? And it's simply saying, you got to be able to make those decisions and make those calls quicker and be able to react quicker in the moment. And that's how it happens, and that's how it comes together.
Yeah, no, I love that. And I also think about the team of 275 people, right? And what it does for them to show up and know there's an automated rundown, and they too can move faster, and they too, it lowers their stress level versus mine says version 44. What do you mean version 47, right? What am I missing, right? So I think about the team. I mean, you mentioned the fan experience, which I think is so great because it does elevate that when you're able to bring your best ideas at the fastest pace to each game, and then also that team. So I love that. So I no doubt know that we're going to have listeners who are like, wow, LJ has a really cool job. I want her job one day. So what's the honest, what would you tell that person? What does it take?
Yeah, listen, first and foremost, it's one of these jobs that personally I have over the years learned on the job, right? There really, to my knowledge, there is no university teaching game presentation and live production. There's multimedia journalism, there's journalism itself, there's production and film, right? But there's really nobody out there in the space who's teaching live event presentation in the university sector, I believe. And so a lot of it comes from on the job. So a big part of this is, it's getting your foot in the door, it's making relationships, it's learning how this all comes together. and being aware of how it all comes. A lot of us got our start in this industry by freelancing for teams back in the day, having a unique job on the crew, whether that's playback or replay operator or camera op or graphics. Like a lot of us came up through the room itself, or maybe it's out on the field, right? Maybe you're a stage manager or you're on the entertainment side of things and managing pageantry. But a lot of us come up through kind of those roles that we have on game day, and find a way, to reach out to people in these roles and say, hey, I'm really curious and I'm really interested about what it would take. I had so many amazing mentors throughout my time in this industry, and people who I could call. And, there were a lot of times that I was in a role that, quite frankly, I don't think I was, necessarily the most prepared for. I certainly was growing at the same time as I was in it. So I'm very thankful to the people who took a chance on me to give me those opportunities. And so I think that, for somebody who's coming in, it's going to be a lot about someone taking a chance on you, but then you also proving that you're worth taking the chance on. So doing the preparation, being curious, asking questions, using your resources around the league, calling people. Hey, DM somebody, take that shot, send them a LinkedIn DM, ask them to have a quick meeting or take them for a quick cup of coffee, whatever it might be. But yeah, a lot of the experience comes from on the job. And really, we have a lot of people who have a lot of different backgrounds that I've seen in these roles. Again, there isn't really a degree in live production to come in and step in and do it.
Yeah, you just got to be thrown in, feel the pressure of live events, right? You can't really role play that, right? Because it loses the intensity when it's live. So I think that makes sense. Well, I know I personally will not be able to ever watch a game again the same way. So thank you, LJ, not only for your time and openness today, but thank you for all that you do, your attention to every small detail that gives us fans an incredible football season every Sunday. So thank you for being here. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me. I've enjoyed the conversation. Hopefully it's come through in our quick time chatting, but I just feel incredibly, blessed to be in this role. A kid who grew up loving sports. I played sports and also, in local theater. So being able to combine those two things is really fun. And hopefully it comes through in the work that we're doing here at the 49ers.
Well, you're definitely doing good work. So kudos to you and your team. We appreciate it. All right. Well, that's it for this episode of Corralling the Chaos. If this one made you think about your own operation, send it to somebody on your crew. If you're heading into your busy season right now, whatever version of football season looks like, good luck out there. Thanks for joining, and we'll see you next time.